hearty welcome on behalf of all of us at the Strauss family. We are welcome to our virtual home. We are now so used to this format, which Matt is so professionally introduced to our company, and everyone adopted with much vigor and enthusiasm, that it's almost a second home to us now. And I can start off by thanking all of you that's attending tonight. We've had incredible support from our clients and customers, not only from South Africa, but from abroad, in joining us in these regular Zoom sessions, which is really
major government.
Okay. Like now, it has been an absolute pleasure to welcome people almost on a regular occurrence at 4 o'clock in the afternoon to share some of our thoughts and ideas and discussions about the art world, the art institutions, and of course, most importantly for us, the works that are coming on auction. I'm sorry we can't offer you all a drink tonight, but virtually you can do that. Mike Exini, I think, Matt, I don't know if you can mute that. Perfect. There it goes. Yeah, so a warm welcome to all of you at what's hopefully almost the beginning of the end of winter. It's indeed been a very interesting time, I'm sure, for all of you, but definitely for us to have been in business, and especially the type of business that we have, which relied in the past very much on our interaction with our clients. We're very much a company that value and enjoy our interaction with clients. And it was quite an adjustment we had to make in the beginning of the year to realize that there, for quite a significant period of time, we're going to have very limited opportunity to have face-to-face interactions with you unless we change the way that we work. So that is exactly what we did. And as you know, it's now old hat, but you know, it was not so long ago that we tried to figure out how to have our March live sale without a venue. And how could we utilize our history in the online auction platform? We've had several successful online auctions. How could we recalibrate? How could we utilize that platform to keep on functioning? Well, as you know, it's been a year of adjustment, but also a year where there's a lot for us to reflect on with gratitude. Firstly, the staff adapted to the changes extremely well. We embraced the technology platforms that we have and find ways to maximize that. And you, our clients, followed us and you supported our use of these platforms. And for that, we are extremely grateful. I summarized a few sort of records for the year, if you want to call them records, but we've already had 7 auctions, 1 a month. By the end of this weekend, it will be 8 auctions in 7 months. And up to now, we've realized sales of 125 million and we've sold 2,500 items. Almost all bar the January online sale, well, it's online sale, Little Monarch sale and this contemporary art sale, all of these works were sold on an online platform of a kind. So that's quite amazing for us. Normally, online sales would be approximately 8% of turnover. Now it's virtually 100% of turnover, which is, I think, a major adjustment, a major new normal for us. Just to say, on the merge in May, we established a record. I think we had the first multi-location live online sale in the world, where we did a sale from not only 2 offices with the auctioneers in 2 offices, but virtually from the home of every one of our staff members. We're bidding on behalf of clients via Zoom. And, now this has become also the new normal. It's constantly new standards in this format, but it's nice to know that we were first. And that auction, where we realized approximately 105 million rand in sales, was extremely important, not only for us as a company, but also very, very important, I think, for the South African art market. And it gave a lot of confidence that the business could resume, that there was still significant demand and sustained demand for South African artworks. So at that May sale was also interesting because we had 742 bidders registered on the platform. As you know, we partnered with Invaluable, an international auction platform. And that was some of the highest numbers ever. And 180 of those clients were new to Strauss. And that's a trend that we've seen with every subsequent online auction after that. We realized a very significant number of new bidders, which I think is it's obviously very heartening for us, But I think it's really very important for the industry and the sustainability of the industry going forward. Just in July, we set a few records with the July online sale, and that's not the sale coming, it's the one that's passed. We sold, we had our highest ever gross for an online sale of 7.3 million rand. But what was particularly interesting for me is that we had 619 bidders participating in the auction, which is also by far the highest number we've had today. So that speaks to me as people's ability to embrace new platforms, welcoming our venture into technology and getting used to it and making full use of it. And that, I think, is really exciting. So just to take a step back and say, so Strauss has, since inception, almost 11 years ago, we've now sold over 28,000 items on auction for a combined value of just under 2.5 billion rand. And I would say long may that last. So when we come to the auction that we're presenting to you on the weekend, we're extremely excited, to put it mildly. And Alistair will share some of the highlights, but the show is anchored by, there are 490 lots, and it's really anchored by two outstanding single owner collections, on which the beautiful Pierneef Bosveld on the front cover is part of. And Al will talk more about it, but it's really become a hallmark of our company that people entrust these really valuable collections that they build up painstakingly with much love and passion over years. And we think it's, you know, we are very humbled by it, and we are very aware of the responsibility of handling these precious works on behalf of people. So, but it's always a source of excitement when you put them all together. I remember a few months ago, a month or so ago, I think, Al, I'm not sure whether it was in compliance or defiance of the lockdown, where we in the Strauss office with masks on and everything, putting up the layout of the catalog, visual layout on the walls. And it was such an exciting moment. And you realize, in a sense, you know, how much we miss in these processes as well. And I'm sure all of you do, your interaction with your friends and your colleagues and actually with the works. But it was a great amount of fun to put these works up on a sort of storyboard on the wall and then start figuring out the layout of the auction. And I think it's really, it promises to be at 90 to 105 million rand. It holds the potential to be one of the most exciting auctions we've had. It was interesting. There's almost for me two different trends in this auction, which is quite interesting, or three different ones. Maybe I should start with the wine, because that's the first 140 lots or so from the wine, from our fine wine joint venture. It's really come of age in the last few months. We've had several sales, white glove sales, 98% sales of every item that we've put on the wine auction. And I think it's both a testimony to the really very careful curation that our partners, Hugo and Roland, brings to the table, but also to the fact that the South African wines have for a long time been underappreciated and undervalued, and that there's a very significant wine demand for the top end of South African wine, which is what we set out to prove from the beginning. And we are really delighted that this venture is reaching maturity so fast, and we've still got many exciting things to do. At the previous online auction, we just sold Bordeaux wines from France. And I mean, if you said to me 5 years ago that someone would have a Bordeaux wine only auction sale in South Africa, I think people would have just backed up laughing and said it will never happen. And it shows you how fast the market can mature and adopt. And I think it's a very exciting journey we are on with our partners there. And on this auction specifically, there's one lot which I think stands out, and that is a vertical. It's lot 54, I think. Al, it's a vertical.
Frank, I'll share my screen and show it to you.
They've been making calls of. You can show it again later. Yeah, you can, of course. And it's it's an opportunity in 5-liter bottles to buy all 19 Paul Sours that's been made since 1988 to 2017. And that is, of course, the wine that got 100 points in the Tim Aitken evaluation a couple of years ago. And that really started this whole journey. And that is pretty amazing. If there was a museum of wine, this really should belong in a museum. Absolutely outstanding piece. It's almost, too beautiful to drink. It's an interesting cover there that they've got all over them, but it looks very real. Anyway, so onto our sale. What is very interesting for me, if we look at the Yeah, the paintings and sculptures on our sale is that there's a fantastic mix between the most powerful South African modernists, which are led by the top-selling artists of all time in South Africa. If you think about it, Irma, of the top 10 artists, she sold 38% in the last 10 years or so. Almost 480 million rand worth of Irma stones have been sold on auction by Strauss. Preller, about 220 million, a little bit less, 230 million, a little bit less than half of that, or a little bit less than half of that, following by Preller at around 175 million. And it's interesting that all three of these stalwarts are extremely well represented at auction, with some amazing Pierneef, Preller, Stearns coming onto the market, including Battiss, Villa, and so forth. In the fifth place of all most collected artists up to now is Kentridge. We are privileged to have 13 works of Kentridge on this auction. But what was also interesting for me is not only the high quality of works by proven South African artists, but the very exciting selection of contemporary artists. And I counted very quickly, Alan, I might be wrong, but there are 9 contemporary artists represented on the show which actually represented South Africa on the Venice Biennale since 2000. And that is,
yes,
I think, a very interesting statistic. And it makes for very interesting viewing from that point of view. And we've been fortunate to have set constantly new records for people like Ati Pataruga and so forth. And it's nice to see a very strong representation of his work. And then what I'm also particularly excited about this auction is there are 2 really interesting Hodgins for me. The one is it's called Memo painting number, is it 1, I think, which is a cityscape, which is unlike anything else I've ever seen Hodgins paint. I don't know, Al, if you've ever seen him do a similar work, but it was truly it's very structural, but still, when you see it, the central Hodgins DNA just comes through, and you immediately know it's a Hodgins, albeit that you have to look twice to say, did he really actually paint a scene devoid of people, or there's this, you have to look quite carefully to find the people. And then there's, of course, a beautiful tapestry of his as well that I think very interesting. And for me going onwards, I'm excited to see what we will do with those beautiful Penny Hopers, the Gerard Marx, a number of other works. It's a really outstanding collection of Andrew Verster's works, which unfortunately recently passed away, but it's lovely to see such a collection and variety of his works on auction as well. So with that, I'm going to hand you over in the very capable hands of Dr. Meredith, who will take you through some of the detail. And thank you very much for joining us, and have fun. Over to you, Al.
Did you not know that Al's got a new nickname? Last night when we were speaking on Kaya FM with Gregoire, he's now called Doc. So anyway, we've all been teasing him.
Hopefully not sort of related to one of the 7 dwarfs.
No.
Nor to COVID, we hope. So,
Exactly.
Well, thanks so much, Frank, and again, thank you everybody for joining us. We thought we'd do a sort of supersonic speed walkabout through some of the highlights. We will sort of flick through a good number of them. Over the last 2 or 3 weeks, we have drilled down sort of into far greater detail on some of them, and we certainly won't be spending too much time on every individual lot, but we will just give you a sense of the offering in the sale. I have to say, I think across the board, the quality of the sale is incredibly high, and of course we're very proud and excited about that, and I would hope the market will be too. I'm generally going to speak until someone butts in or interrupts me. My colleagues know that the moment they want to say something about any of the works that pop up, they've got to sort of push their way through and just start speaking. I have the tendency to, speak a lot, so I need to make sure that people can butt in when they have an interesting point. But Frank mentioned the 2 private collections that will be appearing in the sale next week. And I'll start with the major property of a private collector, which includes our cover catalog, cover lot that Frank alluded to, this mesmerizing, spectacular museum-grade Bosveld scene by Henk Pierneef. I have to say, having spent a lot of time in front of this picture, it is one of the most remarkable paintings I've ever seen. It has the most incredible real sense of depth. And I don't think any South African that has spent any time in the bush will not get a real sense of this sort of magic, unique environment. It was painted in 1953, so it's a late work. He died in 1957. And in the little video we made, we do make the point that this is probably the major twilight year Pierneef masterpiece. It is enormous. It is 1 meter wide. Now, typically Pierneef canvases are about 45 by 60. This is vast. He didn't paint often to this kind of scale. The only places, or the kinds of places you tend to find works like this would be in public offices, high commissions around the world. That's the kind of stature and weight and monumentality that we're talking about in a work like this. They simply do not come onto the market very frequently. So it's an enormous privilege just to see it, let alone sell it. It's probably painted in the northern parts of the country. It has this wonderful rhythm through these trees, particularly in the middle ground. The point we always like to make with a work like this, it's very seriously and deliberately composed. Yes, Pierneef spent so much time of his life out in the veld painting, getting a sense of atmosphere, getting a sense of the decorative element of the landscape, the colors, the contours, the seasons. But a work like this would have been composed very deliberately back in his studio. It's a truly remarkable painting, and we're delighted that it's in the sale. From the same property of a collector, there are 3 magic Sekoto works, all pre-exile works. These are the earliest 2. The waiting room on the left and going home on the right. These are in gouache and watercolor. These date from about 1940, from his Sophia Town period. Before he went to Paris into self-imposed exile, never to return to the country in 1947, he spent time in Sophia Town, he spent time in District 6, and he spent time in Eastwood on the outskirts of Pretoria. All settlements that subsequently have been destroyed, sort of for political reasons, essentially. I love these for so many reasons. They are of enormous historical, topographical importance, but they are so wonderfully fresh and vibrant and alive. These are 80 years old. They look like they were painted yesterday. Look at that wonderful, strong red signature on the left of the waiting room. These are also very well documented works, being exhibited in the major retrospective. And again, amazing to have works of this quality on the sale. The Ezrom Legae, Man on the Horse, also from the single private collection. One of our most important mid-century or 20th century modernist sculptors is Ezrom Legae, along with Sidney Kumalo. This work, of course, is deeply political. It has these wonderful spindly limbs, these anonymous faces, this decapitated beast. Of course, you get a sense of a man and beast struggle, which has a political metaphor, of course. But more than that, it is the most spectacularly tactile item. It's 75 centimeters high. It has an amazing presence. It has this cruciform shape at the top of it, of course. It's another item I think you can spend a lot of time moving around. I have to say that we always get a sense of the works that immediately catch people's attention. And sadly, we haven't been able to welcome the kind of numbers that we usually have at our viewings, but so many people stop immediately at this work. It has a wonderful presence. This Cecil Skotnes, a work called Visit to the Battle Site, inspired by a visit to Izanjuana, a pivotal moment in the country's history, and I think represents one of Skotnes's career high points. This Alexis Preller from 1954, Surreal Minoan Bulls, is absolutely jewel-like. It's another work you can spend an enormous amount of time in front of. It has everything you'd expect in a Preller. It's related to some of his most important sort of parastatal commissions. He has these wonderful stylized bulls, these triangular kite-like origami bulls with these beautiful flecks of orange and coral, these sort of very still clouds in the background, and this wonderful sort of coffee-colored palette with these sort of pops of color. Another mesmerizing little work, as is this Pierneef again. It's one of his cassanes. To me, it recalls his palette from his majorly important trips to the then Southwest Africa in 1923, 1924. These electric lavenders and purples and pinks. Look at this deep blue and sort of purple brushwork in the middle ground there. Cassane is flash drying. There are no second chances. And to put this down in an instant, I think gives you an immediate sense of how spectacularly gifted a painter Henk Pierneef was. You see that in a work like this too. This is a larger, mature oil. I love that wonderful sort of gray tone throughout. It's a wintry sort of dusk scene, perhaps. You know, I think painted at a very similar time to now, sort of maybe June, July, somewhere in the Lowveld, close to you there, Frank. Also, again, these are all works pulled from the single collector sale or session. This is an early work by Gregoire Boonzaier, 1935. It might seem unfamiliar in terms of the subject matter, and that's because it is. This is Gregoire painting in Cornwall on the southwest coast of Britain. He was there learning, exposing himself to various guises of modernism. He spent time on the continent in the mid-1930s. He then returns to South Africa, importantly, and is the major force behind the new group, which was established in 1937, 1938. And in a work like this, again, you get a sense of an artist experimenting, learning, pushing himself. I think almost feeling a little under pressure by the other sort of international artists around him. And as I say, working outside of his comfort zone, but again, to pick up on this kind of off-kilter modernism so quickly is again evidence of his sort of innate ability. And to drive that point home, you know, you can look at a work like this, which is a little bit later from 1938. It's a street workup again by Gregoire. Of course, this has a completely different light. It's a bright, sunny Cape light, and you have all these wonderful little scenes running all the way down the street here to the sort of church steeple in the background. Of course, a work like this has major historical significance. You know, if you want to know what the Boerkaap looked like in the late 1930s, just before the outbreak of war, these are the kind of images you'd need to turn to. Of course, they are historical photographs, but this gives a much richer sense of life at that moment. And again, to talk about his amazing stylistic range, this is Gregoire again in 1933. He's painting with much more sort of chalky colors. This Cape Town harbor view, and I don't know the Cape well enough, but I have, or I get a sense of being sort of on the harbor, sort of a wintry day, a cloudy, heavy day with these sort of boats bobbing in the water, and he captures that incredibly well. Then you have him painting a work like this in the mid-1950s. You know, this is as cubist, I suppose, as he ever rarely gets, these wonderful geometric shards structuring this landscape or urban scene. It's been catalogued in the past as a Johannesburg scene, and I certainly can't confirm it, but these are the kind of works, again, that show the versatility of Gregoire. I love this sort of patchwork in the midground, those peaches and oranges and mustards and olives. It's the kind of work that if you just take a small section of it, sort of stand a few centimeters in front of it, it's entirely disorientating. But as you move back, you get a sense of this fragmented urbanscape. Fantastic painting. As is this, Pieter Wenning, one of my favorite landscape painters. This is a work painted on the outskirts of Pretoria. So it would have been painted before he made his sort of final move to the Cape in 1917. This is an early Highveld picture. This is a picture that's well over 100 years old, and look how fantastically fresh it is. It has these little sort of calligraphic tips to the end of the trees, which are one of Wenning's hallmarks that I love so much. These little, almost like smoke rings sort of moving up into the cloudscape. And that's what this is too, a fantastic cloudscape. If you talk about cloudscape painters, you think of the likes of Constable. Wenning is our Constable when it comes to cloudscape paintings. I absolutely love this work. Look at that willow tree there. And of course, if you've seen a Highveld willow tree, that silhouette is immediately recognizable, but it's done so simply. And that's a real skill, I think. The Namaqualand by Hugo, another fantastic sort of iconic subject matter from Hugo Naudy, at least. These sort of firework yellows and oranges sort of fading away in the foreground with these very very dull peaches. You know, the Hamana scenes and the Namaqualand flowers, I think are Hugo Naudy's sort of most famed subjects, and this is a spectacular example. As is this, I mentioned it a little bit earlier, The Visitor in Eastwood in Pretoria by Gerard Sekoto. So this would have been painted shortly before he goes into exile in 1947. And those of you who missed the talk last night with Greg Malaka, I urge you to go onto our YouTube channel and listen to Greg's interpretation of this painting. He knocked it out of the park. He gave the most incredible interpretation of this picture. I realized at the time that in many ways I wasn't culturally equipped to see the extra layers in a work like this. Of course, immediately it is absolutely stunning. You have these sort of vibrating greens in the background, sort of enclosing these figures, these wonderful undulating flows of yellows and orange in this road. But there's an amazing human moment in this interaction. Greg speaks about the idea of cheka, you know, the idea of a man or a woman going off to sort of check out you know, someone that he or she might fancies, and Greg creates the scenario of this woman sort of stealing away and taking this child along with, almost as an excuse. And you've got this wonderfully cool man in his slack blue blazer, sort of on his bicycle, perhaps sort of bearing gifts with this sort of sharp-brimmed hat, very, very cool eyes. It has this most incredible warm tension in this work. An absolutely fantastic painting.
Well, the only thing
we did find
the only thing that I thought that maybe Greg was going to add in there was that he was so in love with the wine that I suddenly thought that maybe in that suitcase that's in the front of the bicycle there was a secret stash of Boekenhout's Kloof or something, because he was so enraptured with the wine on the same moment that I thought that gentleman was definitely going to whip out something out of that suitcase.
Yeah, that might have sealed the deal for him. Yeah. But yeah, this is an absolutely fantastic painting, and this is when you realize how important a painter Gerard Sekoto was. Not only was he just visually spectacular, but had an enormous political weight in his work. This is just after the Second World War. This is at the moment where he's realizes that there's no future for him in South Africa. So a very, very poignant, stunning painting. As is this, I have to say, if I had to pick a favorite in the sale, wow, this would come very close. This is Irma Stern, and I have to say, this work is painted a few months before this one. So this is the same kind of historical context we're dealing with. Stern is also devastated by what's going on during the war years. She can't travel to Europe. So between 1939 and 1946, she's spending more time on the east coast of Africa and then Belgian Congo, Zanzibar, where she paints some of her most treasured works. She visited the then Belgian Congo twice, in 1942 and 1946, and this was painted on her second trip. It, of course, has the Zanzibari molding around it, which adds a special element. You know, we always get a sense that Stern used those moldings, which were very precious to her, for her most prized and favored works. But there's so much going on in this painting. It has this wonderful, lush, tropical landscape. You have the Nyiragongo volcano in the background on the horizon, sort of covered in these purple clouds and these pink mists. It's unpeopled, it's lush, it's vital, it's very much an Eden, and I think Stern saw it as such. You need to remember what's happened in Europe, what the landscape looks like across Western Europe. It's ruined, it's pockmarked with bombs and shells. The trees have been stripped of their branches and leaves, and she's seeing this landscape at that time, this seemingly untouched, fantastic tropical landscape. And you get all that sense of wonder in a work like this. It is sculptural when you look closely at it. She uses thick greens and yellows, and of course it has an overall a green tone, but if you look closely, it has these strikes and flecks of yellow and blue and turquoise. It's really the most fantastic painting. These are other works from the single collection from Eleanor Esmonde-White, Maurice Fanesh, a fantastic almost Takisme Walter Battiss with these almost piped oils in this midsection, holding firm and throwing different shadows. The collection also includes a number of fantastic contemporary works. This sort of hilarious depiction of a legal advisor by Norman Catherine. This is a large work with fantastic digital detail in the face and in the ears. It has this amazing language almost in the skin of this figure. And then the collection also includes this Judith Mason, who sadly passed away, 2 or 3 years ago now. The idea of this incredibly strong drill bit, failing almost in this more human sort of element, sort of folding over and crumpling, a very, I think, symbolic work, very typical of Judith Mason. Anyway, those are just some of the highlights from that single collection. I suppose to summarize, that kind of collection is a spectacular survey course, really, of 20th century South African pictures. And like Frank alluded to, we're always so delighted handling works coming from a single source. You get a sense of how much love and care has gone in and thought has gone in to putting a collection like that together. And there's a whole new layer of intrigue and excitement when works come to the market from a single collection. As far as other highlights go, and I promise I will skim through these quickly, I love this early Frans Oerda, 1901, during the Anglo-Boer War, when he was captured by the British and painting on their side. This is probably a little bit later, Veldfire, and I encourage you to read the catalogue notes. It involves some other iconic South African painters. Anton van Vaux, this is his maquette for the very famous hammer worker. Small work, but you get a sense of its incredible detail. Look at the flickering flame, the chisel, the mallet, the very gaunt features of the miner, this detailed cloth covering his thighs. Fantastic small work. This would have been cast at the Massa Foundry in Rome. I love this pastel by Pierneef so much, and I'm going to give it a bit more time tomorrow in our final Zoom talk. This is a pastel that he did in 1918, the January of 1918, at Villa Arcadia. I think most of us know Villa Arcadia, designed by Herbert Baker, sort of now the sort of Hollard campuses, but it has one of the most spectacular views over Johannesburg. It was commissioned for Lionel and Lady Phillips, but for most of its life was the site of the Jewish orphanage. I love this picture so much because you can imagine Pierneef sitting on this breakfast stoep on the 2nd of January 1918, looking through down this sort of passageway with the servery on the right, the servants' quarters, shutter windows up on the top, this wonderful bougainvillea threaded through this pergola, and this wonderful golden light flooding through. I will talk about this a bit more tomorrow. Wonderful, typical, gentle work by Pierneef, Die Plaats naby Rustenburg. Another more impressionistic example, the Winterveld by Pierneef. An early work here, Cape Farm landscape, again by Pierneef, with these shimmering grey clouds sort of giving way to this sort of turquoise sky in the background. This is another major highlight of the sale. It's our fourth work by Gerard Sekoto. It's called Wash Day in Sophia Town. This would have been painted, I think, in 1942, before he moved to District 6 in Cape Town. This is the same period as those two early gouaches I showed you a little bit earlier. Greg yesterday pulled out this incredible theme of women in South Africa, bearing such a load and being so often underappreciated. And you get a bit of a sense of this, these sort of 3 generations of women sort of hard at work, bearing a load, going unnoticed, sort of in a moment like this. But you also do get a sense of Sophia Town in the early 1940s. This is during the Second World War, of course. It has this wonderful velvety quality across, you know, using these mauves and taupes and browns. You see a well over here, which has sort of just been used to lift the water up for this particular wash day. Frank mentioned Preller and how his market has just exploded over the last 5 or 6 years. We have 10 works by Preller on the sale. These are 2 small, spectacular gold abstracts. The work on the left called The Gates. This is a rather unusual work called The Shield. One of my other favorite works, a large abstract work from 1963, one of his initial 7 versions of Temple of the Sun that he exhibited in that year. This is I think can be seen or read as a palimpsest, the idea of a language or a scroll or a manuscript being removed and scratched out and repeated and written over decades or millennia, a real sense of civilization, history in a work like this. An enormously complex work, despite it being put together only in 2 primary colors, Preller's famous aquamarine blue and this wonderful electric blood red. An amazing painting, this. As are these 2. These are very early, 1939. I showed you the fabulous Congo painting earlier by Irma Stern. That was painted in the Lake Kivu area, as would this painting have been 7 years prior. Alexis, of course, was in the Lake Kivu area in 1939. He was there on the 1st of September when the ultimatum expired and the world was at war, and he was sort of terrified trying to find his way back to South Africa. So these are very early works by Alexis Preller, yet they still show so much of what he had already experienced and so much of what was to come. I think you could find elements in works like this from 1939 all the way through work from the 50s and 60s, all the way up until his death in 1975. This head of epocha from 1950 is a jewel-like example, a small work still in its period frame. You see the Indebele patterns in the background. I love that pink sort of giving a halo element to this figure. And it's sort of part human, part decorative mask. There's an amazing conflation of the decorative and the real in a work like this. In terms of its color palette, he's pulling the same colors he was using during his famed sort of war period, the work he produced from 1943 till about 1947, 1948. Art historically, this might be the most important Preller in our sale, African Head. It's from 1953. It is closely related to a work he painted in 1949 called The Gateway, which shows these 2 mirrored figures looking at each other. A very pivotal work, one of his early out-and-out masterpieces. And this is almost 1/2 of that Gateway composition. The other half of this, incidentally, is at the Nelson Mandela Bay Museum. So this is a a final opportunity to buy a museum grade work, but one that's very closely related to two enormously important sort of high watermark works in Preller's career. It has this wonderful sort of orange echo around the stylized head, those wonderful fish eyes, or eyes that he would have picked up in West African fetishes, these little orange fangs on the top, these very silent clouds in the background, and of course these Ndebele walls in this very strange flat background with that very distant horizon. I always love historically important works, and I would put these very firmly in that bracket. These are works by Walter Battiss in 1946, and those of you who know Pretoria well or would, I think, immediately recognize the sports fields at Pretoria Boys High. You see the dome here in the background. Walter Battiss was, of course, associated with Pretoria Boys High for 30 odd years. He taught there from the mid-1930s, I think 1936. And this catches him sort of on the weekend, I imagine, just enjoying life, enjoying an athletics meet, a Masters cricket match. And he captures these scenes so freely with these wonderful oranges. And I do think these are historically important works. You know, this sort of pavilion is very well known, and we have wonderful photographs from that period with the Combined Cadets Force sitting sort of under the shade and various other school events. Fantastic. I also have to say that these come from two completely different vendors. The fact that they happen to come in for the same sale is just remarkable, and gives you a sense of how fortuitous some of these collections are. You know, this collection, which as I said earlier, is of an enormously high standard, will disappear. You know, we always say that. You know, come Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday next week, you know, these fantastic works will disappear around the country, around the world, in some cases to private homes, in others to public institutions. But the chances, I think, of seeing these two Battisses together are slim after when it comes to Wednesday.
Oh, isn't there,
absolutely,
just before you go on that, Battiss, isn't there a story that Wilhelm tells about the dome? Battiss was involved in the decorating or the planning. Wilhelm, I can't quite remember what your...
You see the dome there in the background. Walter Battiss helped carve the mannequin based on a schoolboy at the top there. But later, Walter Battiss was also involved in having it cast in more permanent bronze.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, we should probably encourage somebody to go. I mean, it just makes such an obvious pair, don't you think?
Yeah, absolutely. This is a absolutely fabulous still life by Erik Laubscher. I have to say, we spent many hours discussing whether this might be a pear or an avocado pear. I don't think that's particularly relevant. It's just a stunningly beautiful painting. It has a wonderful composition. I love the contrast in the color. These very bright reds in this tomato or in this apple, these very moody purples, these mulberry colors in the background, and you'd never dream about combining that with a black and white sort of chessboard almost in the front section. And I think a mark of a sort of truly fantastic painter is being able to make these kind of comparisons, make these things work. And of course you have this shallow bowl in these olives and mustards, almost suspended in this composition, yet of course you do get a sense of its shadow, just in the different tones of the whites and grays. I absolutely love this work. You know, we have an incredible tradition of mid-century abstraction in South Africa. It's a subgenre, I suppose. It doesn't get nearly the credit it deserves. These are pictures that I would always argue would hold their own in any international museums around the world if you were picking up on a particular theme, on a particular thread. These are sort of truly world-class examples. The work from that major private collector that I showed you earlier, it is sort of supplemented by this wonderful, if slightly smaller, property of a collector from a Pretoria family. And I'll skim through some of these works. To me, it's a bit of a microcosm of some of the most important, mainly high-felt painters working in mid-century. So we have this absolutely fantastic etching by Pierneef, and frankly, I expect this will do incredibly well. It's at such attractive estimates, but the stunning pair of sort of child portraits by Maggie Laubser. These were bought separately, but again, you get a sense of a collector making his or her own connections, whether he or she bought the boy or the girl first, I don't know, but at some point he realized that there was a wonderful companion piece to the one he already owned. And I love that, a sense of development and evolution that you see in a private collection. This is an absolutely stunning work by Maud Sumner. It's a slightly later work, probably from the 1950s, when she returns to Europe, having spent a lot of time back in South Africa in the 1940s. I don't think you need to know anything about Maud Sumner or anything really about painting to appreciate a work like this. It just knocks you out in terms of its color and its beauty. Of course, it's not a naturalistic scene. There aren't too many towns that would look like this with these kind of lilacs and purples on the facades. But you still get an incredible sense of moment. But the most important thing about a work like this is its sheer sort of decorative joy. And I would argue to get the same in a work like this by Henk Pierneef. Again, those purples and lavenders that he started using when he went to the then Southwest Africa in the early 1920s. This is a bit later. This is in the mid 1940s. So this is just as the war is ending. And again, I love looking at a picture like that, like this, with that kind of international context. Look at those clouds sort of moving higher and higher at the top section of the composition. This wonderful quiet valley you see in the foreground. I love early works by Battiss, Cilliers-Barnard, and this is very much one of them, influenced heavily by the Frenchman André Lotte. Betty was very much under his sway at the time. A late work by Frans Oerda, and you do get a sense of an artist coming to the end of his life and his powers, a very, very late work. The owner always saw it as his final work, which gives it extra weight. We spoke about this Marjorie Wallace work last night. Again, an incredible painting. I think if you just glimpsed it, you would just get a sense of joy in the color, but it's a very, very meaty work, not only in the immediate moment, but very much linked to the zestigers, the Afrikaans literary movement in the 1960s, who Marjorie Wallace was so closely linked to. And when you have that in mind, you get an idea of its political weight. I will skim through some of these a little quicker, but we have a wonderful Scout by Van Vaux. You don't see these very often, one of his sort of mid-sized works. I have to admit, it's one of my favorite conceptions by Van Vaux. This is a Boer guerrilla in freezing cold winter conditions, peering over the rock, getting an idea of very, very nearby British positions. His beard is pressed down to the rock. He doesn't want to break the silhouette. He's under this heavy, heavy blanket. His knuckles are pressed hard into the rock, and you get an incredible sense of his bravery. This work would have been cast at the Massa Foundry in Rome, so we know it would have been cast after probably 1926, but between that time and the artist's death in 1945. We did a little feature on Guello Goodman for two reasons. Firstly, he's an incredible painter, hugely undervalued, underappreciated painter. And secondly, because we happen to have stunning examples. These are just two of them. This is the garden at Woodley in Durban. He was spending a lot of time in Durban, where he had a major impact on the architecture movements there in the mid to late 1930s. And the other work on the right, an earlier painting, probably around 1912, just before the First World War. This is, of course, a view of Florence. In a work like this, more than others, I think, you get a feeling for Guello painting on plein air, painting exactly what is in front of him, even if it is very, very quickly. This is not a studio picture. This is him sitting in front of this famous Florentine view and painting what he sees as quickly as he can before the conditions change. John Mole, again, enormously important painter in the South African context. We have two fine examples, the joyous flowering acacia on the left and this veld fire scene on the right. A very decorative, spindly work by Cecily. Sash, she died sadly very recently. This is from 1956. The important female force in the Amadlozi. Another Amadlozi artist, Edoardo Villa. These are some of his small-scale bronze works. Cecil Skotnes, one of his incised and painted panels. This measures about 1.2 by 1.2. And I would say this is one of my favorite works on the sale too. A work that has fabulous presence. It has a sense of origins, I think. As does this, a beautifully sleek, if primal work by Sidney Kumalo. Although this would have been from later on in his career when he was very much under the sway of Linda Givon, but more specifically by the great British modernist sculptors like Henry Moore, Kenneth Armitage, Lynn Chadwick. A very sleek, simple, beautiful sculpture by Sidney Kumalo. Villa again, large-scale work, The Meeting. It's a maquette. The full-size work is on the Kingsway campus of the University of Johannesburg. And again, go look at our YouTube channel, some of our social media. James, our photographer, shot a wonderful video with a drone moving around this work and giving you a bird's eye view, which he also needed to show both of these large-scale works by Edoardo Villa. The Mother and Child on the right in bronze from the early 1980s comes from that hugely important property of a collector. It's a far more architectonic, sort of stylized cubist rendering of the Mother and Child, whereas the one on the left, this enormous tubular work by Villa, focusing on the same subject matter, is far more sleek and slender. Again, go look at our YouTube channel. This villa is 5 meters in height. It returned from Britain on an oil tanker. It was produced in 1974. It was one of his first tubular sculptures. Very, very importantly exhibited in 1974 through the Goodman Gallery. I think we are used to seeing Villa's tubular aesthetic, but this is the formation moment of that very, very famous aesthetic. The other two very similar works from the initial exhibition in 1974 are outside the Rupert Museum in Stellenbosch. Ruth Everard Hayden, from the sort of famous women of Bonnefoy, the fantastic Everard group, one of our most important subsets of South African painters. I love this particular example. Look at that rhythm in the clouds. Look at that wild ocean. Look at those jagged rocks in the foreground. Again, another important historical painter. I love that sort of tidal movement, that swell peaking right on this crest all the way down the coast. I think so many South African visitors to the coastline would have seen this kind of view. Wonderfully wild, beautiful, fulvous kind of a picture. Walter Battiss, again, needs no introduction. These patch marks, sort of larger forms of color with these wonderful figures sort of interspersed. No real sense of horizon, very much in the spirit of sand art making, stunningly decorative, as is this. It's a work by Jack Heath. Again, I spent more time on this on some of our Zoom talks. Olaf Bischoff, more contemporary. Betty Cilliers-Barnard, again, slightly later than that portrait I showed you. This work called Forms Within Forms, or Embracing Shapes. And such a fantastic title for an out-and-out abstract picture. This color combination, along with that Erik Laubscher still life I showed you earlier, would be one of my favorite combinations in the sale. I know we're running out of time. Wilhelm, I think he's going to spend a lot more time on this incredible Mimo painting, and Frank mentioned it a little bit earlier. A work that seems so unusual for Hodgins, yet the more you look at it, the more you realize it can only be Robert Hodgins. But if you look closely, you'll see all these little windows with almost a photographic Robert Hodgins form in each one of them. But look at that fantastic moody light in the bottom, this shadow of a vehicle moving in these deserted streets. It has a spirit that only Robert Hodgins can conjure. We also have this tapestry. It is enormous, I can assure you, 3 meters in height, covers one of the big windows in our new galleries, sort of woven by the Marguerite Stevens studio, still capturing all of Hodgins's humor and fun, as does a work like this with these wonderful, almost Easter Island style heads poking out of the sand. A little light class conflict with this figure shouting out, "Fat, smug, capitalist bastard," again, couldn't be more typical of Hodgins's work. As is this by Norman Catherine, his Tactical, which has been screwed into our gallery wall, which presents quite a sight. It's hanging under one of Georgina's fabulous paintings. Wilhelm has made a video of this work as well as this 9 films, and I have to tell you that that video has been viewed, I think, 26,000 times in the last week, which gives you an idea of the wonderful digital reach that our auctions are having. It's certainly a viewing record for Strauss & Company. Of course, we generate an enormous amount of video content, but it also, Wilhelm's, what he actually says is so fantastic, but also I think immediately rams home how much of an international figure William Kentridge is. I think all of you will recognize this image. Anyone that knows Peter Clarke will know this work. The final painting, which is predominantly in orange, forms the cover of that very important Peter Clarke monograph, this work called Listening to Distant Thunder. And again, we've written about it extensively in the catalogue. We've spoken about it in our Zoom talks, and we'll be speaking about it again probably a little bit more tomorrow. These wonderful angular figures with this very desperate sense, this desolate landscape, and this very spiky dead tree sort of hovering over them. Atipatruga in enormous demand at the moment, locally and internationally. And we have this, I have to say, quite staggering tapestry in the sale. It's been repatriated from Europe. There's over 4 meters in length, yet it has the most incredible detail, these golden, green, pink threads running through it. Look at these jungle-like leaves in the background, this checkerboard of black and white in the right, this oriental carpet, which is really mesmerizing when you stand in front of it. I have spent a lot of time in front of it. I love moving from that mesmerizing Pierneef Bosveld to this Atipatruga tapestry. Georgina's Advocate, which is a fabulous work, which is hanging just above that Norman Catherine Tactical. Again, we've had enormous interest in this work with these sort of blood red lips, this sort of strangely confusing kind of expression, this wonderful flat peach background. It's again another work that has caught the attention of so many. The Deborah Bell, the very important custodians, in bronze, a large-scale work, a small edition from her very, very famous figures with these sort of this totemic monumentality. Gerard Marx spoke with Clive van den Berg 2 or 3 days ago in one of our Zoom talks, and it was unbelievable. Sean O'Toole, sort of the incomparable Sean O'Toole, was sort of asking both these artists questions about a work like this. And again, I do encourage you to go back and go through those videos. You get an amazing insight into works like this. This is one of my favorite Penny Siopis works. It is breathtaking, particularly at close quarters, this wonderful, almost tortoiseshell pattern in the carpet, this triangular area of of jagged yellows and oranges and sort of volcanic reds moving into shadow, sort of as you move past this almost monument of this sort of self-portrait figure holding up this dress with these photographs. This is Penny doing, I think, what only Penny can do, dealing with such enormously weighty, heavy thematic elements, political elements, in the most spectacularly decorative way. This is a really wonderful example, as is this. Wilhelm, I think, is going to talk about it again at some length, maybe tomorrow. After Japan, and again, I put this as one of my absolute favorite works. Certainly in Johannesburg, we hardly see major works by Christo Coetzee from this period. And I mean, I was just personally so delighted to see a work like this, particularly after Wilhelm's amazing retrospective at the Standard Bank Gallery, 18 or so months ago. We've hung this Christo next to this Clive. So different in so many ways, but that work together so brilliantly in terms of their colors and their gestural mark making, as well as their tactility, even though this is, of course, a 2D painted surface, whereas Christo's is very much ripped to shreds in terms of the way it's composed and developed. We spent a lot of time on this Helen Sabidi work. This was exhibited at the Norval Foundation retrospective just last year. And again, Greg Walak had a wonderful interpretation of this work yesterday. We're delighted to bring the first major Porsche Zwavahera work to market. A lot of you will remember this series of works from a few years ago at the Johannesburg Art Fair. And as I say, this is the first major example appearing internationally in terms of the secondary market. A fantastic Mishak Masamvu, Walter Altman, the most delicate, fantastic wall hanging sculpture you'll ever see. Again, this is a work that you need to move towards sort of at a slow rate and then move away from again. Of course, you see this, this baby figure in the center, intertwined and linked together in these wonderful little aluminium rings. Mofa Takadiwe, incredible take on printed modernity, this idea of a palimpsest or a language, where we've hung this work next to the Temple of the Sun by Alexis Preller from 1963. Fabulous early work by Wim Botha. He's also recently had a retrospective at the Norval Foundation, and a very unusual work by Keith Alexander. And these works come from the St. George's Anglican Church in White River, and they're being sold to benefit that community. And we have a number of works that are being sold in our auction next week that are benefiting mainly art institutions around the country. Not going to talk too much about Norman Catherine and Andrew Verster. He died, of course, sadly, and very recently, and Frank alluded to it a little bit earlier, as did Hanneke van der Walt. And we have three fabulous works by Hanneke van der Walt, again, just giving a glimpse to her amazing range. Other works by Zanele Mahole, Mikhail Sabotsky, and again, our wonderful collection of wines from Canon Corp and Boekenotes Kloof and Klein Constantia, which some of our wine specialists have been through over the numerous Zoom talks over the last 2 or 3 weeks. Sure, you'll all be delighted that that is me finished. You won't need to hear any more. But thank you so much for joining us. There are a few final things I would like to say. Firstly, all of our works are still available to view at our Johannesburg offices. We'd prefer it if you made an appointment, but everything is on show the whole of tomorrow and the whole of Saturday. You'll probably have the whole galleries to yourselves, which is a unique experience as we allow people in sort of staggered sessions. But please do come have a look. There are some sort of truly incredible works on the sale, and some of them really need to be seen to be appreciated. I don't know if you can still see my screen, but I'll still end off with this little video, which is now on our home page to give you a sense of our viewing rooms.
We can't see your screen, Al.
Okay, hold on, and I'll start it again and share it. Okay.
Here we go.
So yes, if you go onto our homepage right now and just click on the start of this video, well, there, sense of that amazing scale of that villa. You probably can't hear it, but I've got a sort of quite a modern sort of banging soundtrack going on in my ears.
No, we don't.
We also have the virtual 3D galleries of each section of viewing, which is also perfect.
Yeah, but you'll get us. There's the Cristo, that fantastic Cristo, the Preller, the Porsche, and look at that Atipa Taruga, sort of dominating the entire end of our gallery. Fantastic work. But yes, Susie mentioned the virtual galleries. If you scroll down on our web page, on our home page, and click on our virtual galleries, you'll be able to go into all the different rooms. This is our sort of large new gallery space, and you'll be able to move around the gallery. All the lots are linked too, so you can get all the cataloging details too, sort of as you browse around in virtual reality.
That's great. Thanks, Al. I think, yeah, it's truly sad that we can't invite everyone in person there, but if you do have the chance to go, it's absolutely fantastic show, I think. And thanks for leading us through it with your normal enthusiasm and you know, wonderful knowledge about each artist. It was really fun. And yeah, we all invite you to visit our website. If you need any information, please do not hesitate to contact any of the specialists on any work. We'd be very happy to provide you with more detail. And otherwise, we'd love to see you on the sale on the weekend. It starts at 11 o'clock with wine on Sunday. Don't miss that. We'll shortly get an opportunity to drink it, I hope. So, Matt, otherwise, unless you want to say something, I think we can bid everyone adieu with this. And thanks, everyone, for their support and their time. And have a good evening.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Frank. And thank you so much, Al. That's always wonderful to hear your reflections. Ladies and gentlemen, also, please, again, as we said, please go and check our website or contact either Cape Town or our Johannesburg offices for any details on how to register to bid. We've got specialists waiting to assist you for registration or any inquiries. We'll have, I'm sure we can have specialists on hand in the weekend to answer any questions that you've got in condition or anything like that, in lieu of being able to actually physically see the work. So we are fully open for virtual business, and it's very exciting to see the sale. I think we've set one amazing precedent already, and it's been, I think, we're in for exciting times. So I'm looking forward to seeing you all in the week. Al, can you just give us the last details of what's the talk that we've got tomorrow? Just so everybody can.
Yeah, so our final Zoom talk tomorrow at 4 o'clock. We'll be back to our 4 o'clock slot, and it'll just be a sort of specialist relay. So all the specialists will be on. Some of us will pick some of either our favorite works or works that maybe we haven't spoken about very much. I suppose I'd like to talk about that early Pierneef pastel a little bit more. I know Valhalla wants to talk about the Nemo painting. So we'll just pick up on a few others that maybe haven't got as much attention up to now. So yeah, that's what it'll be, just a casual chat before the sale starts on Sunday morning.
So I like to call those our pre-sale relays. So ladies and gentlemen, please join us. Good evening, Judith. Always lovely to. Sorry, I beg your pardon. I think with that, thank you very much for joining us, ladies and gentlemen, at Strauss & Company. And we've been listening to our chairperson, Mr. Frank Kilbourne, and Dr. Alexis, head of department in our Johannesburg office, speak to us about some of the highlights of our forthcoming sale of modern post-war contemporary art and fine South African wine that's going to be on sale starting on Monday starting on Sunday, I beg your pardon, and going through to Monday and Tuesday for bidding. So please join us on our live virtual platforms at Strauss & Company, and it's been a delight having you this evening. Please stay safe and have a good evening. Very good. Thank you. Bye-bye.